Good morning. It's funny, I haven't recorded in a while, but I did record one and I didn't post it, and I'm like, interesting, Alex. But it's funny, when I had recorded my last ones, there was like this literal pull, like, I need to record this. And so that's usually when I choose to record something. It's like, okay, if something's saying I should record, then I'm going to record. And, but I wanted to share about a pattern that I'm hitting, and it's fascinating because I sent a message to a friend, and she just kind of like reflected it back at me, and I really valued that. It was super supportive. So there's a few patterns that are actually like just showing themselves, like it's like, oh, that's so same like, but different. So back in I don't even know what year it was. Before 2017, probably a year or two before that, I burnt out. I was working with homeless youth, and I freaking loved my job. I loved what I did. I loved the amount of growth and change I could see in these young people, and being able to give them that care and support was just so enriching for me. And it was my first it wasn't my first role in the social work field. It was my second one. The other one was outreach with high-risk youth or vulnerable youth. And yeah, but then when I went into this one, I was working super long hours and putting so much energy into it because they needed it. Like, one thing I don't think our world realizes is that, we get paid very little for the intense amount of work we do, and they pay us for this amount of work. Like, they say, okay, you need to meet with them at least an hour a week due to the amount of clients you have and the amount of paperwork you have to do and all that stuff. But really, think of a youth going into housing by themselves for the very first time, having been in high risk situations, and I get to give them an hour a week for mentoring and support and coaching and teaching and all that stuff. That's pretty fucked up, right? So what I recognized, especially at the beginning, they needed lots of support. So like 10 hours a week at least sometimes, because of the actual move and the process, and getting things unfolded, and just depending on where they were on their journey and what stage of housing they were at, and what stage they were at in the program, and what stage maybe they're at with their mental health and addiction and things like that. So I took 3 weeks vacation one time, all on overtime, and that wasn't even using my vacation. And my team had started dwindling. Everybody was burning out, and I was left. And I started going to my supervisors and saying, hey, I need help. I don't know what's going on. I just know I'm not doing well. And they kept saying, you're doing great, you're doing great. And I'm like, I'm not doing well. And you're doing great, you're doing great. Not even me crying. I went to my supervisor and I went to my manager. That was above my supervisor. And all of them were like, you're doing great. You're doing great. Just take time off. Just take time off. And it's like, taking time off isn't giving me the skills to manage whatever is arising inside of me, but also manage the things that are going on in my client's world. Because as we would lose staff, then I would have to take on more young people. And if their worker had burnt out, then there was actually extra work that was needing to be done because some balls had been dropped. Pardon me. Yes, I am a perfectionist in terms of, I really believe that the people I work with deserve the best. And how can I give them everything possible in a world that has continued to not give them anything, right? And show them that so that they can embrace that and take it. And so, like I said, I had so much success. A lot of my young people transitioned into full independence and continued post-secondary, and I was so lucky. And it was a beautiful job, but there was a day that I burnt out. Like a day, like I felt it coming, and then a day I snapped. And the snap turned into a week of literally feeling so enormously ill that I would put myself in very hot water because I was so cold, and nothing could warm me up. And the pain that was moving through my body was so intense. And then eventually I went to the doctor, and they're like, oh, you have a tonsil infection. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting one. But my burnout, the moment I knew I was done was a client started yelling at me. They were very stressed about an eviction, and they started yelling at me and blaming me for everything, and I yelled back. And it was like, whoa. So yeah, it makes sense that the tonsils definitely came up, but my family experiences lots of health issues, and like rheumatoid arthritis, issues with just regular arthritis, but like heart issues and all those, and high blood pressure and depression, and it's just a very stressful life for my parents, and obviously for myself, but in different ways. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to be my parents. I'm not going to be my parents. And I gave a month's notice because we were just in the process of accreditation, like where people come and go through all of our files, and they do interviews with clients, and they do interviews with staff, and every couple of years. So I'm like, okay, I'll stay through this, and I'll get through this month. And it was horrible. But that year leading up to it, when I was asking for help, straight up asking for help, I recognized I maybe didn't go to counseling so much at that time. And if I did, I was going about relationship help. And I wasn't getting very good support. But I was going to yoga. And yoga, I feel like saved me. And eventually became a big part of moving into my spiritual path and my path that I'm on now. And so just recently, I had one of my breakthroughs with my EMDR and that, and I was like, oh man, I feel like so much more free in myself, but I also started feeling like I don't have boundaries again. And when I'd burnt out the last time, I realized one of the things that started happening is because I didn't know how to navigate the challenges that were arising and the amount of need that was on top of me, I started blurring my boundaries so I could meet the needs of others. Very common, people pleasing, fawning, taking care of others over responsibility, responsibility kind of thing. So in this recent time, I recognize, I'm like, man, I'm not having appropriate boundaries. Like, I can feel it, I can see it in how my clients are responding to me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I noticed that, but I didn't understand it yet. And then I'm like, man, you know what? I've been going to the gym lifting weights because that's been, directed to me for perimenopause after you're 40. And so I've been going and lifting weights, but I'm actually finding after a day that's like extremely intense at work and like very overstimulating for me, going to the gym is actually not helpful. I need something more quiet. And I'm like, man, I want to go back to yoga. I miss yoga. I need yoga. And so I'm like, oh, wow. Like the last time, all right, I really needed yoga when I was burning out. I'm like, oh, I am burning out because I've been raising my voice at my clients in group. We just got, 4 weeks ago, we had a new group, like new people coming into the group, which really changed the dynamic. And then this week we got more people, and it really changed the dynamic, and changing the dynamic in ways that I haven't been able to regulate myself to. And recognizing like I'm supposed to bring in like 2 more in a couple weeks, and I'm like, no, my nervous system can't handle it right now. I can't. And I think about when I was burning out last time, and like yoga was my savior. I would go pretty much every day to this amazing hot yoga sequence that I loved. It was like called Moksha Yoga. I think it might be, is it called something different now? Moto Yoga, I think it's called now. Freaking love it. It's not too hot, but it's hot enough, and it was such good sequence, and I loved it. But also, okay, I recognize I lost my train of thought as I start thinking about the yoga. Oh, I was taking on those extra clients, right? Because where else were they going to go? And the other new staff were struggling with their quality of service because they were struggling on their own, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of management gets into management positions when they haven't done the job. That's like a whole other story. A whole other story. So they have no idea how to support people who are doing the work, which is fascinating, when that is exactly their role. We're supposed to kind of be the clients, and we're supposed to be led and guided and supported in navigating it, but we're not. That's how the human service field works. So here I am realizing, okay, I can't take anybody else in my class. Like, I'm getting a lot of my workers, like a lot of other staff coming up to me like, oh, like there's this so-and-so and so-and-so and this other person, like, oh, I really need this program. And I just realized like I can't take on anybody else, and that makes me feel like a failure. And the fact that I was snapping at my clients, like very obviously, that yesterday we had a big conversation, and like, I apologized, I took accountability. Like, we had a really productive conversation. It was a short conversation, but it was a productive and like learning moment for all of us. But the amount of shame and embarrassment I feel for not being able to be perfect. And when I say perfect, I also just mean showing up the way I want. And I've learned that boundaries are an important thing. Boundaries with the clients, boundaries with myself, self-care with myself. And so here I am in the process of burning out again. And I'm catching it before it becomes really bad. I have an appointment with my counselor today, so it's great. I'll talk to her about it. I'm aware I'm so different than that time. So I have practices, I have tools, I have awareness. And so that pattern is arising, and I'm needing to face it in a new way. So I'm definitely going to share about that journey a little bit here. Another pattern that is showing itself upon me is my landlord just gave me notice that I need to, like, I have until the end of May to move. And because they're wanting, so I rent a room, and it's a very large, beautiful room. I like love it. I love where I live. It like makes me happy. And I'm really lucky that a lot of times I do find these amazing places, and I make them a heart space home for me. It becomes a safe place. And so now my safe place is being uprooted as well, and I'm being offered a much smaller, like a space that's half the size, and which ends up being like a very tight space for the same amount of money, which is fascinating. This is the housing market. Here we are. Part of me actually thinks she says she's going to use this space for her business, but I actually think she's going to just rent it out and rent it at a higher price instead of like asking me for more money. I don't know. But I don't even know how much more money I could spend. Anyhow, so here I am. And so when I first moved to St. John, St. John, New Brunswick, I moved into like this woman who has an Airbnb. And so it was a temporary placement until the actual tourist season began. And so then I found a place out in this beautiful area called Rosse, and it was perfect. Oh my God. The most amazing place and the most amazing like location. Oh, I was so lucky, like so lucky. And but then they sold the place. So I moved in with like the person who was my roommate at the time. She was moving in with a friend who has a house, and so I moved in with her and him. And it was a very, very bad situation. So again, I had a tiny room, and I moved from Calgary without my belongings, like just with basic belongings. So the bed they had was actually like a kid's bunk bed. And little did I know that like I don't fit on that. Like I barely fit. And it was very uncomfortable. It's a tiny room, and he was although he was like a kind person, he was a fine person, but he wanted to control the environment, and it was still like a higher price. Like it was way more than I should have paid for what I was receiving. And he got angry that I was having the heat on in my room. Like, this is the thing. And it was winter in St. John. So anyway, when I eventually moved out, I came into this place. And last year we had an issue with cockroaches, which isn't common for Canada. So that was freaky. And I'm terrified of cockroaches, but we made it through. And here I am knowing that chances are there's going to be another bout of cockroaches this summer. But anyhow, I'm losing my safe place again. And it actually took me a long time. It takes me a long time to recover from that when I'm forced into very uncomfortable situations after. So I find that fascinating, that I'm being told I have to go into a smaller space, paying the exact same amount. And I'm like, oh God, here I am. I'm back being pushed into a situation that I don't want to be in. And so here I am. I'm facing needing to change location, losing my safe space as I'm burning out. So I'm like feeling two patterns at one time. And like back then, at least, I had like a lot of extra money. And now I don't. So there's a lot more trust that I need to have in the universe. Back then I also was not starting my own business, which anyway, and I had a lot more support around me in terms of like more friends and family. And now so it's a very different situation that I'm in, but feeling and hitting similar patterns. And I'm interested to see how this all unfolds. And I'm ready to face it and to grow beyond it, because I think this is showing me some important pieces that, although I've learned and grown from, clearly there's more to see. So, I mean, obviously, if you want to share any of your tips or tricks about burnout, if you've worked in the nonprofit sector, in the helping service profession, and have experienced the burnout, love to hear from you. If you understand that, like, having sacred and safe, comfortable home feeling like space, and then being like forced and moved around, man, if you've experienced that, go ahead and leave a comment or share some stories, because it's real. And that's where I'm at, and I just wanted to share that. And I'll be sharing parts of that, trying to understand my burnout, boundaries, and new beginnings. Because it is new beginnings, whether it's my place, like moving into a different space, or having to show up in a brand new way. Because last time burnout took me down and I had to rebuild. And this is me having been rebuilt. And burnout is a beautiful sign that something's not working. And although I've rebuilt, there's clearly some pieces that need some refinement. And I'm grateful for the lessons and the opportunity to see it again, but in a new in a new situation with new eyes. So take care.